Back from the dead. 6 artists who came roaring back. People love a success story, but they really love a comeback story. Because anyone can win when everything's going right. The real question is, what happens when the spotlight shuts off? When the hits stop? When the industry moves on like you never mattered? Today, we're counting down 6 bands and artists who were basically declared finished. Done. Washed. Buried. Some of them went from stadiums to state fairs. One of them hit such a low point he ended up on a novelty record, singing with a dog. And somehow, they still found a way back. Let's get into it. Number 6, Toto, From Grammys to Ghosted. Then Africa saved everything. In 1982, Toto were untouchable. Their 4th album Toto 4 wasn't just successful, it was a full-on takeover. The record landed in the top 5, and suddenly they were stacking hits like it was nothing. Rosanna, Africa, I Won't Hold You Back, Make Believe. Those songs weren't just charting, they were everywhere. And then the weird part happened. Because Toto didn't collapse from a lack of talent. They collapsed from the thing nobody talks about, momentum. It slowed. Then it slipped. Then it disappeared. In 1984, they fired lead singer Bobby Kimball, and replacing that voice wasn't easy. The next albums didn't hit like before. And as the years rolled on, Toto started looking like a band stuck in a revolving door of singers and identity shifts. At one point, their label pushed them to hire a theatrical performer named Jean-Michel Byron, and that era became infamous. We're talking spandex, choreographed moves, jazz hands energy. While Toto were basically trying not to make eye contact on stage. After that, the fall got real. For years, Toto released albums that didn't even chart. It got so quiet you'd think they were gone. But here's what critics never understood about Toto. They weren't some corporate rock boardroom invention. These guys were elite musicians, session legends who played on countless hit records behind the scenes. The world used their talent, then acted too cool to celebrate them. And then came the miracle. A new generation rediscovered Africa. Pop culture started pulling it back into the spotlight. It showed up in unexpected places, news coverage, comedy, TV references, until it stopped being that old song and started being a phenomenon. Then the internet did what it does best, turned nostalgia into obsession. A teen fan launched a campaign pushing Weezer to cover Africa, and when Weezer finally did it, the cover blew up. Suddenly, Africa wasn't a retro song, it was a modern anthem again. Streams exploded. Fans came back. Younger listeners joined in. And just like that, Toto went from forgotten to reborn. Not because they changed who they were, but because the world finally caught up. Number 5, Creed, hated, mocked, split up. Then Gen Z made them cool again. Creed might be one of the strangest comeback stories in modern rock because they were never small. They were massive. By the early 2000s, Creed had become one of the biggest rock bands on earth. The numbers were ridiculous. Multi-platinum albums, arena tours, and radio dominance. Songs like Higher, With Arms Wide Open, and One Last Breath weren't just hits, they were cultural fixtures. But success is dangerous when the world decides you're uncool. And Creed became the punching bag. A loud part of music culture framed them as corny, overly serious, too dramatic, too everywhere. People accused Scott Stapp of having a messiah complex, and the jokes just kept stacking. And then the real-life chaos started piling up too. Incidents, controversies, the kind of headlines that don't just embarrass a band, they poison the whole vibe. There was even that infamous 2002 show where Stapp struggled on stage so badly that frustrated fans filed a lawsuit trying to get their money back. Imagine that, you're so mad at a concert, you take it to court. Not long after, Creed broke up. The band members moved on, forming Alter Bridge. Stapp went solo. And for a long time, it felt like that was the end of the story. Then the internet flipped the script. Around 2020, Creed's music started going viral in the wildest way. Short clips, memes, nostalgia reels, people singing the hooks like they were born for stadiums again. And then something happened that turned the comeback from online to real world. Higher became associated with the Texas Rangers during their championship run, pushing Creed right back into the mainstream conversation. Suddenly the band wasn't just remembered. They were trending. They reunited. They announced shows. They returned. And here's the best part. The younger generation didn't live through the era where it was cool to hate Creed. They just heard the songs and liked them. No baggage. No media narrative. Just big hooks, big emotion, and big choruses. That's how a band goes from mocked to packed arenas again. Number 4, Frank Sinatra, the greatest voice ever. Hit rock bottom with a dog duet. Now this one is almost hard to believe. Because when we say legend, people like Frank Sinatra don't even feel human. He's not just an artist, he's a symbol. But even Sinatra had a point where the world started moving past him. In the 1940s, Sinatra was unstoppable. Hit after hit, screaming fans, movies, radio dominance. But by the early 1950s, the Sinatra frenzy cooled. He wasn't the teen idol anymore. His personal life got messy and public, especially his scandalous relationship with Ava Gardner. And then the worst thing that can happen to a singer happened. His voice failed him during a performance. And then came the record that basically became a punchline forever, Mama Will Bark. A novelty track featuring Sinatra, a non-singing actress, and a dog. Think about that for a second. This is the man who would eventually define cool. And at his low point, he's on a record that people call one of the worst moments of his career. But that humiliation didn't kill him. It lit a fire. Because Sinatra's comeback wasn't just a hit song. It was a total reinvention. He took a massive pay cut just to land a role in From Here to Eternity, and it paid off with an Oscar. Suddenly, the world had to look at him differently. Not as a fading idol, but as a serious artist again. Then the music came roaring back too. New label. New era. Classic albums. Timeless singles. Sinatra didn't just survive the 1950s, he owned them. And when the Beatles threatened to dominate everything in the 1960s, Sinatra did what only Sinatra could do. He adapted, and he stormed back with Strangers in the Night, proving he still had power. That's why his comeback is so legendary. Because he didn't bounce back from one bad year. He bounced back from being laughed at. And that's a different kind of victory. Number 3, Air Supply, a greatest hits album. That almost ended them. Air Supply's story is painful because they didn't crash from failure. They crashed from success, used too early. In the early 1980s, Air Supply had one of the craziest hit runs in pop history. 7 straight top 5 hits in just a couple years. Lost in Love. All Out of Love. The One That You Love. Even the Nights Are Better. They were flying. Then their label got an idea, put out a greatest hits album. Sounds normal, right? Except Air Supply hadn't been around long enough. They weren't 15 years deep. They were barely into their prime. And they knew what it would signal. This is the summary. This is the peak. This is the ending. They tried to fight it. They lost. The compilation sold millions, and it became the definitive Air Supply statement, which meant radio stations started treating new music like it didn't matter. Why play the new stuff when the classic collection already exists? So Air Supply had to adjust. Instead of chasing charts, they rebuilt around touring and long-term fandom. And slowly, pop culture started pulling them back into relevance through placements in TV and movies, moments that introduce old songs to young ears. That's the twist. Air Supply didn't come back by trying to be modern. They came back by leaning into what they already were, emotional, timeless, and impossible not to sing along to. Sometimes the comeback isn't about returning to number 1. Sometimes it's about refusing to disappear. Number 2, Def Leppard, From Stadium Kings to Walmart Parking Lots. Def Leppard being on this list feels wrong, because in the 80s, they were too big to fall. Photograph. Rock of Ages. Pour Some Sugar on Me. Love Bites. That's not just a run of hits, that's domination. They were one of the defining rock bands of the decade. But the 90s changed everything. Grunge hit. Alternative took over. The entire culture shifted. And suddenly, bands like Definite Leopard were treated like leftovers from another era. They experimented. They tried to evolve. But critics weren't kind, and the industry love faded fast. And here's the moment that stings. In 1999, Def Leppard were booked for state fairs, and even played a free set in a Walmart parking lot to promote an album release. Imagine going from global stadiums to the pharmacy entrance. That kind of fall messes with your identity. But Def Leppard never accepted the washed-up label. They kept moving. They fought for control of their music. They rebuilt their momentum. And then came the streaming era, and once their catalogue became available again, the numbers proved something important. The fans never truly left. A new generation found them. Pop culture placements brought the songs back into daily life. And suddenly, the band that was written off as yesterday's news was seeing crowds that were younger than anyone expected. That's the definite Leppard story. They survived the industry pivot. And when the world finally got nostalgic again, they were ready. Number 1, Nickelback, the most hated band. That outlasted the hate. Nickelback might be the ultimate modern example of this whole back from the dead idea, because they didn't just fall. They got publicly roasted for existing. Their breakout came with How You Remind Me, and it hit like an earthquake. Number 1 everywhere. A monster. And after that, they became a hit factory, but that same consistency became the weapon people used against them. They were accused of being formulaic. Too similar. Too generic. Too overplayed. Then the internet turned them into a meme. The hate got so loud it turned into a sport. There was even a viral pickle popularity contest online where pickle got more fans than Nickelback. Think about that. A vegetable out-polling a band with millions of records sold. But here's what Nickelback did that was smarter than most artists ever manage. They didn't beg for approval. They leaned into it. They kept touring. They kept selling. They kept charting. And over time, the culture started shifting, especially as younger listeners came in without the baggage of those old jokes. Gen Z found Nickelback in karaoke bars, on TikTok, in throwback playlists. And without that "you're supposed to hate them" pressure, people just admitted the truth. The songs hit. And then the documentary Hate to Love. Nickelback helped flip the narrative even more. It basically forced the conversation into the open. Was the hate ever fair, or was it just oversaturation turning into groupthink? Either way, Nickelback survived the hate era, and came out the other side with a last laugh. Because when the trend is to clown you, and you still fill arenas 20 years later, that's not failure. That's dominance. So that's the list. 6 careers that got declared dead and still came roaring back. And honestly, it makes you wonder, how many artists didn't fail because they weren't talented, but because the industry moved on, critics turned, or the culture changed overnight? Now I want to hear from you. Which comeback surprised you the most? And was any of the hate, especially toward Creed or Nickelback, ever justified? Drop your memories in the comments, and if you want more countdowns like this, make sure you're subscribed, because the next one might hit even harder.
Thank you, my viewer. I hope you keep it here on my channel for more discoveries on all the celebrities' untold journeys. Like, comment, and subscribe on Hajara Rama channel. Thank you so much.